This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. We're all about stories here, and we've got some good ones for you tonight. Here's what we're looking at. Buying a car has been tougher than usual lately, in part due to a crucial shortage of one particular piece of tech. We've got more on the impact there, plus an unlikely alliance between US political and media figures and a small Eastern European nation. We'll explain what it means, but first, our top story. If you're one of the now 1 billion people who use TikTok, you might have seen some videos like these. These are hauls, where users buy hundreds of dollars worth of clothes, usually from one brand like Shein or Boohoo, and try them on and review them for the audience. These videos have seen a resurgence over the pandemic. Chinese fast fashion brand Shein dominates the trend. The hashtag Shein Haul has over 2.5 billion views currently. These trendy brands like Boohoo, ASOS, and Shein have been skyrocketing. Shein's 2020 revenues were estimated around $10 billion, and its app dethroned Amazon for the most downloaded shopping app on iOS. And that might seem surprising considering how much retail brands have otherwise been struggling. JCPenney declared bankruptcy early in the pandemic. Lord & Taylor closed all its stores and filed for bankruptcy last summer. Even other fast fashion brands were in bad shape. H&M has shuttered hundreds of stores, and Forever 21 had already declared bankruptcy back in 2019. So what makes brands like Shein different? How can they be making this much, this fast, and this cheap? First, we need a quick history lesson. Just a couple of decades ago, much of our fashion calendar cycled around major magazine spreads, runway shows, and long production schedules. The style seen on the runway every calendar season would eventually, as Miranda Priestley might say, trickle down to retail stores.
And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact, you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room.
But that started to change in the 1990s with the rise of fast fashion, first coined by the New York Times to describe Zara's sped-up production process. Zara boasted a 15-day pipeline from the design stage to clothing racks. Well, in reality, it was closer to about 3 to 5 weeks, but still fast though. These faster production cycles meant brands like Zara, Forever 21, and H&M could keep up with demand for more affordable clothing. New collections were available more and more often, but it only ballooned from there. Worldwide, clothing production doubled between 2000 and 2015, while prices dropped. On average, Americans now buy a piece of clothing about every 5 days. Not only do we buy more clothes, but we keep them half as long. Globally, it's estimated 85% of textiles end up in a landfill each year. That's enough for one garbage truck of clothing to be dumped every second. And that clothing we throw out is often exported. There are major hubs for secondhand clothing in South Asia and across the African continent, which also gets burdened with the massive amounts of textile waste. For example, take a look at these shots from Accra, the capital of Ghana, where local sellers hawk secondhand clothing known as Obroni Wawu, meaning dead white man's clothes. A lot of the imported garments aren't wearable and go straight to the landfills. These are shots of a cliffside completely made of waste, about 60% of which is clothing. In many landfills like this, where the waste doesn't compact properly, so much methane gets built up that it can combust and catch fire. One such landfill fire burned for 11 whole months. And the modern fashion industry is not just producing catastrophic waste, the whole production line itself wreaks havoc on the environment. One study found the fashion industry accounts for roughly 1.2 billion tons of greenhouse gases annually. That's more than all air and sea travel combined, and it's estimated to grow by 50% by 2030 at its current pace. So where does that leave us today with brands that can produce and sell even faster? Remember Zara's revolutionary 3-week timeline? Zara has since sped up to produce hundreds of new items a week. That's still far behind ASOS, which adds as many as 7,000 styles in a week. Part of the reason these ultra-fast fashion brands can add so quickly is because they pull popular styles immediately from social media trends and celebrities, instead of a slower seasonal schedule. And these sites can rely on direct consumer data to speed up even further. Shein collects data from its website and app to immediately inform its designers about user preferences. And then their suppliers can make new styles in direct response. And each new style only gets a couple hundred garments made to test its popularity popularity before ordering more. To some, that might just seem like an efficient system, but it allows brands like Shein to be hugely wasteful and encourage more spending and operate with very little oversight. The speed of that production has raised a number of other regulator questions too. These ultra-fast fashion brands have been in hot water for plagiarizing designs, unsafe labor conditions, and for offering little transparency into their production. But these aren't problems that are unique to Shein and fast fashion. They're rampant in the fashion industry, and honestly, we don't have the time to unpack all of them. Yes, the fashion industry has long been plagued with these issues, but we're trending in the wrong way, and fast fashion exemplifies a lot of these problems. So the question is, what can we do about this? Sure, we can try to slow down how often we refresh our closets, or we can try to keep clothes a little longer, maybe shoot fewer Shein haul videos. But at the end of the day, consumers are often being asked to choose between clothing that's affordable and clothing that's good and long-lasting. And that's a problem that's going to take industry-wide change to address. Here to talk with us a bit more about this topic is journalist and eco-fashion expert Alden Wicker. She's also the founder of ecocult.com. It's a site dedicated to industry reporting and sustainable shopping guides. You know, many eco-friendly brands may not be affordable or size inclusive or just hard to find. So I'm kind of curious to know, can you tell us about some of those challenges and ways we can easily shop better?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that I tell people is the easiest way to shop sustainably is to get to know your own style. I think a lot of the waste and the overproduction comes from sort of buying things because you think you should be the type of person that wears that, or an influencer bought it. So really getting to know who you are and being confident in yourself is definitely the first step, because then you can have a closet just full of things that you truly, truly love. The other thing I would say is secondhand shopping is your friend. You know, there's this thing that people believe that when you're donating secondhand clothing, what it's doing is it's providing a way for low-income people to get affordable clothing. And that's actually not what it's for. It's so that charities can sell that clothing, get the value out of it to support their charity work. So when you shop secondhand fashion, you're also keeping something out of the landfill, you're keeping it in the local economy, you're supporting the local economy, and also you're reducing the amount of resources that is being used to clothe yourselves. And then the third thing I'll say is you're absolutely correct that sustainable fashion is not very size inclusive, right? You know, it's a lot of size inclusive brands rely on synthetic fabric that is a little bit more forgiving and stretchy. You know, you need to get things tailored to your specific body type, all of these different things. And it's starting to get better, but we're not there yet.
It is still a really tough thing for so many people to find, you know, the clothes that fit them at an affordable price that's also eco-friendly. I mean, what would it take to reach a point where we won't have to choose between affordable clothing and sustainable clothing?
I don't necessarily think everybody can or can pay more for sustainable fashion, especially when you're looking at two different t-shirts and the organic cotton one is $5-10 more than the other one. It's like, why am I paying that? Is that going to the farmer? Or what is that doing? Is it worth it? I think that we need to get to a point where actually we cut consumers a little bit of slack, right? We're not experts. We have other priorities. I think that we need to get to a place where we demand action from governments, getting legislation.
Let's say that that there's a Department of Fashion, and you've been put as the head of the Department of Fashion within the current administration or current government. If you were to address these issues with sustainable, affordable fashion, I mean, what would be like the first 3 items on your wish list if you were to lay out your agenda?
Yeah, I mean, there is a movement to install a fashion czar in the administration.
It's you. I just gave you a new job, fashion czar.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Well, I would advise that person that the first thing we need to do is mandated transparency. So just like a publicly traded company has to put out reports that you can use to compare their financial performance to other companies' financial performance, I think there should also be reports that are mandated, legally required, that allow you to compare the carbon footprint, the water footprint, the labor standards of, let's say, a Nike to an Adidas, so that we can actually make good decisions. I think that we need to have a system where brands can't say that they didn't know about something that's going on, right? There's a fire in a factory. Oh, we didn't know. There's wage theft in a factory that they've contracted with. Oh, we didn't know. No, I think if you're a company of that size, you can know if you do want to know. And so I don't think that they should be legally liable.
How can we, let's say I leave the desk right now and I go, I'm wanting to shop. How can I be a more eco-friendly consumer?
I really recommend that people go for natural materials, right? Cotton, linen, wool, all of those different types of materials that, they just also feel better on your skin. They're not synthetic materials like polyester and nylon. They're actually made from petroleum products. They're a fossil fuel. They're a plastic. And also another thing you can do is shop from brands that have a reputation that they care about. So I know you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, you go maybe a little bit on TikTok, and you get bombarded with these ads from brands that you've never heard of, right? They don't have a reputation to protect. And so they're probably the worst for the environment out of any of these brands. The brands that have a reputation that they care about, go for brands that you trust, that make a quality product, that have a return policy, that have a repair policy, that really indicate that they want to provide you with a good product and they stand by their product. And then it makes you feel good.
Man, breaking it down for us. Journalist, eco-fashion expert, founder of ecocult.com, and soon to be fashion czar, Alden Wicker, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
When you're back, we'll take you through today's trending topics. You can either log into your social media accounts and get a smattering of trending topics, or you can keep watching the show for the next few minutes and get your trending topics handpicked. All right, here's what we got for y'all. Today is National Farmers Day, and while it's a great time to shout out the overall wearing, tractor driving, goat wrangling, cow milking folks across the country, it's also a time to highlight how the industry has been disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic and climate change. COVID-19 created a bunch of supply chain issues with our nation's farmers. For example, tens of thousands of workers at meatpacking plants across the country have been exposed to the virus, and the industry's production fell about 60%. On the climate change front, high temps and droughts have led to billions of dollars in losses for farmers, while flooding can happen in an instant and affect crop growth for seasons. This might be more farm talk than you're used to, but if you've been in a grocery store, you know how disruptions can affect you too. The USDA announced last month a $3 billion investment to help with drought relief and resilience and to protect farms and farmers from future market disruptions. Texas is trending again, this time for a vaccine mandate ban. On Monday, Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order prohibiting any entity in Texas, including private businesses, from requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for employees and customers. It's worth noting the state does in fact require several other vaccines for K-12 students and college students. In a tweet, Abbott did say the vaccine is our best defense against the virus, but should always remain voluntary. This comes as President Biden ordered the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, to draft a new rule that will require any company with more than 100 workers to mandate COVID-19 vaccines or weekly testing. Once it's out, the rule would take effect where OSHA has jurisdiction, which is 29 states, including Texas. We couldn't resist this last topic since we're in the middle of spooky season. The trailer for the new Scream is out, and a lot has changed in Woodsboro, California, including how to break into a home.
Doors unlocked. All doors locked.
The franchise first started back in 1996. Since then, there's been 4 movies and a TV series. Kevin Williamson, the writer of the first movie and 2 of the sequels, came back as an executive producer for this film. The newest movie has a whole new cast, but some of the OGs are back on board.
It's happening. 3 attacks so far. Do you have a gun?
I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
The movie hits theaters January 14th, and really, I'm just hoping for some crazy plot twist behind the mask because can't no regular human just keep disappearing and popping back up like that. Shortages have been trending pretty much since we've been in the pandemic, but we aren't fighting over one-ply toilet paper anymore. Today's shortages have become a lot more serious and a lot more impactful across a wide array of things in our everyday lives. There's one thing in particular that's been scarce for a while now, and that we've done some previous reporting on here on ITL. Cars, laptops, gaming devices, medical equipment, washing machines, and LED light bulbs all have one thing in common: a semiconductor chip. While some of those chips are as small as a strand of hair, the demand for them is pretty huge. And right now, the US doesn't really have the supply to keep up with it all. As much of our everyday lives become reliant on technology, a lot of things require these chips, and producing them isn't a very easy process. The car industry is really getting hit hard by the shortage. Ford has even had to halt production at some plants. And the thing is, this ongoing shortage is already having a wide array of impacts on consumers, especially if you're in the market for a new car. For a more in-depth breakdown, we turn to Newsy's partnership with the Washington Post's video team.
There's a lot of people that are looking at the car business right now and saying that, well, the car business is changed forever, and nothing's really changed in our business other than you see this lot is empty.
The pavement tells the story.
What you're not seeing is cars, and what you should be seeing is cars.
It's a global supply chain crisis you can drive by.
Right now, we are in probably the biggest hole when it comes to motor vehicle inventory we've ever been in.
From Anchorage to Abilene to outside Washington at Darkar's Ford, dealers don't have much to sell, at least what you can see, and maybe drive home with.
Normally in this particular dealership, we'll have 400 or 500 cars on the ground for our customers.
On this day, 26 new cars, just enough to represent the Ford lineup of SUVs, trucks, and a Mustang. This all goes back to the start of the pandemic, when everything stopped. Automakers halted production, but by doing that, they gave up their spot in line at the plants making chips. These slivers of silicon matter, because cars are basically rolling computers these days, from navigation screens to tiny cameras.
I think there's been this kind of rude awakening for a lot of the manufacturers that they've become so dependent on these computer chips.
With stimulus money to spend, sales came roaring back. The chips did not. So vehicle sales have since taken a dive. It's been on again, off again for automakers and their plants. These pickups came off the assembly line, only to be stockpiled at this racetrack because they lacked chips. In Kansas City, the Ford plant has spent the year online, then offline, trying to make the F-150 pickup the best-selling vehicle in America. The GM plant has largely been closed since February. It makes the Chevy Malibu sedan, the kind of car that may disappear in all of this.
It's been very telling to see which vehicles get priority and which don't. And I think if you're looking for a sneak peek as to which models may or may not be around much longer, sadly, it's probably pretty easy to see at this point.
It's already happening at other automakers who are killing off models. The winners, higher-priced SUVs and trucks. Getting more chips into vehicles will take a reordering of the supply chain. Automakers have to get back in line, joining laptops, gaming systems, all the electronic gizmos people keep ordering during the pandemic. But building more of these high-tech plants is not so easy.
Because you have facilities that operate at such high capacity utilization, you can't just magically create more chips. And these plants take multiple years to build and cost billions of dollars to build.
And the problem is only getting worse, with new COVID outbreaks at chip plants across Asia. A global clog in shipping is slowing down deliveries of raw materials like steel and rubber. For car buyers, it all means there's less selection and almost no haggling. You'll pay what the dealer is asking, and maybe more.
If you've got a specific year, make, model, color, and trim that you want, you're going to kind of be at the mercy of the dealer and the market costs right now, and those are high.
That makes it a profitable time in the auto business. Jamie Darvish says nothing's really changed. People still need cars, but we may be getting a peek at the future.
We don't maybe necessarily have to have, all the inventory sitting on the ground, when the customer comes in to purchase a car.
Take advantage of Ford's Built For You program.
BuyAToyota.com is designed for speed.
Increasingly, customers are buying them online, customizing what they want, and then waiting. It's that wait that may linger until 2023.
When you drive by the dealership and you see the empty lot, we're open. We do have a car flow coming in, and we can find a car that fits your needs.
Shout out to our friends at the Washington Post for that piece. But we aren't done talking about shortages just yet, though. After the break, we're turning our focus to schools and diving into a pivotal role that's been hard to fill. At this point of the pandemic, we're seeing shortages not just of products, but of people. Signs advertising hiring or warning of staff shortages are pretty common these days. Employers are struggling to convince workers to fill low-wage jobs, particularly if those jobs are in settings that leave workers vulnerable to COVID. Schools are seeing a shortage of para-educators, school district staffers who work under the supervision of teachers and often help some of the school's most vulnerable students. Newsy's Thomas Hoppaugh talked to school officials about the new tactics they're using to fill the void.
Medically fragile students that require one-on-one supervision, and we've got to provide that. We've got to keep them safe. They're relying on us. Literally, they're relying on those staff members for their lives every day.
Ever since the pandemic started, school districts across the country have been struggling to keep employees. According to a Frontline Education survey, in 2021, 75% of school districts and cities reported shortages. 35% of districts reported having shortages in paraprofessionals and paraeducators, those who fill important support roles within classrooms.
When things started to go online and students were no longer going to the classroom, the role of paraeducator, just like the role of teacher, had to shift and change. And a lot of school districts just didn't know what to do with their paras.
Lisa Thomas is a paraeducator and director of education at Pierce College, who provided this video of its para certification program.
So they're experiencing this turnover where their paras are becoming the certificated teachers. And part of the issue is paraeducators tend to make around minimum wage or a little more. And so they're probably thinking, well, if I can make substantially more money just by going to another 2 years of school and become a certificated teacher, why wouldn't I do that?
But Michael Cloud, Director of Human Resources for a small K-12 district, which provided this video of its paraprofessionals, say students desperately need these paras.
These are critically important to many of our students in many of our classrooms, and they take some of the burden off of our teachers so that the teachers can focus on teaching and instruction and some of the administrative tasks that happen in classrooms they support. So they support a wide range of important tasks that happen at school every day.
He says their district is down paras by 10%, which is why it changed tactics to recruit.
Well, from a financial standpoint, there's not a pool of money to pull from. We certainly can't raise revenue like a private business might try to do. Our line of recruiting has changed. Typically, we've said these are benefited positions and it's a stable job and you get to be on your kid's schedule. We've changed our thinking a little bit on the recruiting side to say these are flexible jobs. That flexibility seems to be potentially a bigger draw than the benefits and the stability.
So at Weber State right now, we're actively in the process of preparing 70 future or current paraeducators.
To combat this para shortage, Shirley Dawson at Weber University says this year the school created a paraeducator and paraprofessional certificate program that grants 30 students free tuition.
Financial support is often the greatest stumbling block for paraeducators entering the field. So if we can support paraeducators by removing that barrier, the floodgates just open, it seems, of people who are interested.
School districts hope these programs and tactics will bring more paras back to where they're needed most, the classroom. I'm Thomas Hoppo reporting.
Even with the global pandemic, there's been so much going on in the US that it's hard to keep up with what's going on in the rest of the world. But a lot of it can affect what we see here. After the break, we'll look at how the rise of national politics in Hungary is becoming a model for right-wing politics here in the US. Tonight, we thought we'd put a little spotlight on an unlikely global political friendship that's been building for a while now, starting with this. Former Vice President Mike Pence speaking at the Budapest Democratic Summit in Hungary in September. And this is former Attorney General Jeff Sessions meeting with Hungary's Justice Minister also in September.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight.
And this is Fox News host Tucker Carlson, who flew to Hungary and broadcast his show from Budapest over the summer. You may be wondering what a little Eastern European nation like Hungary did to get all this attention from these influential folks on the American right. Well, it turns out some key conservative figures in the US are pretty excited about how Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban is running things. Orban has been in power for more than a decade. He's managed to do that because his party, the Young Democrats Hungarian Civic Union, also known as Fidesz, has redrawn political districts in his favor, bought up control of most of Hungary's independent media, and in general, blurred the lines between party and state. And when it comes to political policy, Orban and his party have checked a lot of boxes for the US's right wing. As seen in Carlson's Hungary coverage, US conservatives are big fans of how Hungary's handled its southern border with Serbia.
Hungary has no desire to destroy itself, no desire to encourage crime and misery and unemployment in its cities. We thought to ourselves, why can't we have this in America? The answer, as you know, is because our leaders don't want to have it.
The border stuff kind of ties in with something else Orban's party has made a big focus: religion, but more specifically embracing the idea of a Christian Europe rather than secular government. It's something former President Donald Trump touched on during his and Orban's White House meeting in 2019.
And you have been great with respect to Christian communities. You have really put a block up, and we appreciate that very much.
And the country passed a controversial anti-LGBT law in June that, while originally intended to protect against child abuse, has added provisions that Amnesty International says appears to be a deliberate attempt by the Hungarian government to conflate pedophilia with LGBTI people. According to a recent New York Times report, Hungary has had a years-long lobbying effort to get support from right-wing groups in the US that now appears to be paying off. Former Attorney General Sessions' visit was aided by one part of that lobbying network, the Danube Institute, an institution which receives some funding from the Hungarian government and uploads video with titles like "Canceling Cancel Culture." That would be right at home in right-wing spaces here in the US. But while it's been making some friends stateside, a lot of Hungary's recent actions have put it at odds with other members of the European Union, which decided to withhold emergency COVID funds for Hungary until it carried out judicial reforms and investigated corruption cases. To a lot of watchdogs, Hungary is becoming decidedly more authoritarian. The pro-democracy group Freedom House said last year that Orban has dropped any pretense of respecting democratic institutions. Hungary's next election will be next year, and the opposition parties are attempting to form a united bloc to oppose Orban. If they fail, those opposition parties fear Orban and his party will move further toward nationalism and authoritarian government. So to get a better understanding of this trend toward nationalism in parts of Europe and how that affects the rest of the world, we're going to bring in somebody with a little bit of expertise. Our partners over at Bellingcat have done award-winning work when it comes to covering international extremism. We're going to now go to reporter Michael Colburn from the Bellingcat, who has reported on these nationalist politics in Europe for several years. Michael, thank you so much for being here, man.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
We've laid out some sort of connection between, some folks on the right here in the U.S. and folks on the right in Hungary. If you could, I'm curious if you can lay out exactly why, audiences in the West, maybe audiences in Canada and in the US, why they should be paying attention to this. I mean, how does this affect folks elsewhere, specifically people in the West?
The thing is, it's definitely part of a trend, and a worrying trend, not just in Hungary, but across the region, across Western Europe, and I think across all of our countries. This groundswell of very strong, very virulent anti-LGBT sentiment. What's going on in Hungary is that as these far-right groups, hold up these anti-LGBT banners, as they make all these statements, as they do this anti-LGBT spectacle, their own government, like in Hungary, was passing a so-called anti-LGBT propaganda law in June, modeled on Russia's infamous 2013 quote-unquote gay propaganda law, which in theory is intended to stop the promotion of homosexuality and quote unquote gender ideologies to anybody under the age of 18. So what the far right is doing in Hungary and in other countries is not happening in a vacuum.
You wrote this article about far right dudes showing up to Hungary's football games. We all get a little excited when we're in a stadium and we're watching our favorite teams, but these folks take it to a different place. Can you tell us a little more about who these folks are?
Well, in Europe, there is a scene, different scenes, not like there would be in the United States or in Canada or North America for the most part, of a minority of football fans who are essentially football hooligans. They'll call themselves ultras, and some ultras are not involved in politics. Some are involved in sort of left-wing politics, but a lot of them, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, are invariably right-wing and particularly far-right. There's no shortage of football fan groups affiliated with major clubs in Central and Eastern Europe that are openly far-right or even openly neo-Nazi. In the article you mentioned, obviously, I talk a bit about the Hungarian experience with their national team, but also some of their club teams. But this is a phenomenon I've also personally seen in countries like Serbia, like Bulgaria, like Ukraine, where one of the major outlets for young men, particularly, almost in a sense of like a gang or something like that.
Michael Colburn from Bellingcat, he's helping lay this all out for us and our audience. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
In recent years, many people have delayed marriage and starting families, which has contributed to slowing down population growth. When you're back, we'll be talking about one group that's actually expanding. U.S. population growth has been slowing down the last few years, but one group in particular is keeping their growth going: Hispanic and Latino Americans. They make up more than half of the country's total population growth, according to the most recent census data. All that growth is leading to new efforts to make everyone feel welcome in some of the places that are diversifying the quickest. Newsy's Chris Stewart has more.
Sometimes home is a place that needs to be discovered.
At the end of the day, we all need that sense of belonging.
When Yolanda Rojas's husband landed a job in the oil industry in 2012, she and her 5 children left Arizona for rural McKenzie County, North Dakota.
We moved to North Dakota for the opportunities, just, a better shot at the American dream.
While the oil fields here offered opportunity, this area lacked diversity.
I was just like, okay, we're outnumbered. And it felt weird. I felt secluded, and I didn't feel part of the community. One of the first things that made me feel inadequate here. We're not seeing anything Hispanic, like no programs, no organizations, no events, nothing that promoted a diverse culture.
But much like the oil fueling the rush of people coming here for work, diversity is also seeing a boom. The 2020 census found North Dakota to have the fastest growing Hispanic population in the country, growing around 150% in a decade.
When I was growing up here, it was Norwegians and Germans, and it was Lutherans or Catholics. We're kind of the diversity that we had here. This area is kind of the hottest.
Daniel Stenberg has seen plenty of change in the county he works for. McKenzie County is the fastest growing in the entire country.
I mean, I think rural America is generally considered to be resistant to change or maybe not be super welcoming to newcomers. I'm sure we could find some of that here, but just because we grew so fast, so quickly, that we didn't really see a lot of that resistance.
But Yolanda found for many in the Hispanic community, North Dakota was a place to work and not much more.
The feedback I was getting was, this is a boring town, there's nothing to do, I don't like it here. As soon as, I save up enough money, I'm leaving.
But now Yolanda is providing the help that she says can be overlooked in communities changing so quickly. She's established an organization to help the growing Hispanic population better integrate into North Dakotan communities.
We don't want them to leave. We want them to feel comfortable in their own skin here and just feel accepted.
She and her husband opened a Mexican restaurant, which she says would not have survived in the pandemic if not for the support of the same community she says she once didn't feel accepted in, a place she now considers her home.
I will not move from here. Like I've jokingly said, if they try to kick me out, I'm not leaving. This is my home now. I consider myself a local here, and I have no intention of moving anywhere else.
I'm Chris Stewart reporting.
If you've been keeping your eye on the calendar, you'll know it's Hispanic Heritage Month. Newsy is continuing the celebration by highlighting stories from Hispanic and Latino communities. Many young Latinas are gaining new confidence to celebrate who they are. And as Newsy's Alexa Liaco shows us, one organization is using technology to tell their stories and help young Latina women find their voices.
Okay, turn it around.
This robot is girl-powered.
I don't think he likes it.
And so is this entire organization.
No.
This is Latinitas.
We were founded to increase the representation of Latinas and other girls and women of color in media and technology.
Two different platforms with similar intentions.
Two platforms we feel are the most powerful tools for social change, to change attitudes, influence the world. They're just a device for girls who are underrepresented to be able to express themselves.
Laura Donnelly founded Latinitas in Texas 20 years ago. The problems she wanted to fix then are still happening today.
It was a very slim and few opportunities where young girls, women could see those that were paving the way ahead of them.
But this generation gives her hope that will change. Meet Mia.
I'm 9 years old.
Lily.
I'm 9.
Vanessa.
I am 10 years old.
And Anna Victoria.
I am 13 years old.
Girls today.
Just making friends and learning everything.
Role models tomorrow.
I'm most excited about helping the younger generations find themselves.
For some girls, that discovery comes from computer science and coding.
Sometimes I'm like this. This helped me found something that I really wanted to do in the future, and it really inspires me.
For others, it comes through film and media.
I really liked when we had to make a stop motion film.
When I blasted off into space, it felt like freedom.
It was about this immigrant who traveled to the moon with her dog.
With each project, the girls are encouraged to bring ideas from their hearts and their homes.
And I thought that immigrants were really a good example because they're people that can be underestimated a lot by their abilities, especially since they're not born in the US.
Where Latinitas, that part of their identity is celebrated, encouraged, cultivated.
Now these girls see their Latin heritage for what it is, a gift and a responsibility.
Because my mom comes from Mexican descent, but my dad was born in the United States. I feel like it set me the role to show other kids that they can be from two mixed heritages and still become something big.
Because without fear comes space for true creativity and community.
Seeing that people that are like sort of like me make me feel like less alone and make me feel more confident.
I can do it. It's nothing stopping me.
And with that pride, these Latinitas are determined to be the face of a girl-powered revolution like we've never seen before.
And that, to me, is that American dream.
I'm Alexa Liaco reporting.
We'll be closing the loop on today's news in a moment, but first, a reminder that you also have the chance to be in the feedback loop with us. Let us know what you liked or didn't on social using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Before we sign off, it's time to close the loop. Let's take another look at our top stories today and make sure you're all caught up. These trendy brands like Boohoo, ASOS, and Shein have been skyrocketing. Just a couple of decades ago, much of our fashion calendar cycled around major magazine spreads, runway shows, and long production schedules. But that started to change in the 1990s with the rise of fast fashion. These faster production cycles meant brands like Zara, Forever 21, and H&M could keep up with demand for more affordable clothing. New collections were available more and more often, but it only ballooned from there. Worldwide, clothing production doubled between 2000 and 2015, while prices dropped. On average, Americans now buy a piece of clothing about every 5 days. Not only do we buy more clothes, but we keep them half as long. Globally, it's estimated 85% of textiles end up in a landfill each year. That's enough for one garbage truck of clothing to be dumped every second. The speed of that production has raised a number of other regulator questions too. These ultra-fast fashion brands have been in hot water for plagiarizing designs, unsafe labor conditions, and for offering little transparency into their production. Consumers are often being asked to choose between clothing that's affordable and clothing that's good and long-lasting. And that's a problem that's going to take industry-wide change to address. Then we took a little dive into Hungary's politics. You may be wondering what a little Eastern European nation like Hungary did to get all this attention from these influential folks on the American right. Well, it turns out some key conservative figures in the US are pretty excited about how Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban is running things.
Hungary has no desire to destroy itself, no desire to encourage crime and misery and unemployment in its cities. We thought to ourselves, why can't we have this in America? The answer, as you know, is because our leaders don't want to have it.
And the country passed a controversial anti-LGBT law in June that, while originally intended to protect against child abuse, has added provisions that Amnesty International says appears to be a deliberate attempt by the Hungarian government to conflate pedophilia with LGBTI people. To a lot of watchdogs, Hungary is becoming decidedly more authoritarian. The pro-democracy group Freedom House said last year that Orban has dropped any pretense of respecting democratic institutions. Hungary's next election will be next year, and the opposition parties are attempting to form a united bloc to oppose Orban. That's it for In the Loop, but let's meet back here tomorrow, say 9-ish, for a whole new episode. Evening Debrief is next.